So many HVAC owners think that an employee shortage is just a labor market issue, but when you actually measure time to fill, you discover the real bottleneck is inside your hiring process. So in this lesson, I'll show you how one simple KPI reveals whether your recruiting pipeline is helping your company grow or silently choking your revenue. So what we need to calculate is how many people you hired per month, and then what was the time it took on average to fill them. And this actually isn't going to be an average, it's going to be a median number. So if you're familiar with median, it's the middle number. So an average of, say, 1, 2, and 100 is going to be 103 divided by 3, right? Whatever that is, 34. But the median will be 2, the middle number. And so we have a data set here, and what pretty basic data set is just, when was the job opening, when do you want them to start, what is the role, all that stuff. And then you have different stages of the application process: applied, phone screen, things like that. And then, did they get an offer? Was it rejected? And then from here, this is the column we really need, the accepted column. And then we need to calculate the month, and we're doing it off of the filled date here. In other words, when was the job filled? And then from there, what was the number of days? And the way you calculate that is we take when the job was filled versus when it was opened, right? So it's just that minus that. But we have to do something a little bit different, and whenever we calculate this, meaning we need to only calculate if this is yes, right? So if it's blank, then we just want to return blank. But if it is yes, then we want to take, we want to do the math on those two dates to get the number of days it took. So the first thing we need to do, I'll just redo these formulas just to show you what I did. So we need this one here, which is just the end of the month of when it was filled, not when it was posted. So EO month here, comma 0. And then you can see it's formatted wrong, but you can see that these dates match these dates. And then now we need to write an if formula saying, if this is yes, then do that math, otherwise make it blank. Or you could say, if this is blank, then blank, otherwise. So either way of the if then, you can choose your scenario. But equals if this equals, and then use quotations, yes, then the filled date minus the open date, otherwise blank. And you can see it's blank all the way through, and then you have the numbers here. Okay, so now we can actually get started on our, charts and our calculations. And so what we're going to do here is we can take a unique list here. We can take a unique list of the months, but the problem is that some months there aren't hires. And like, for example, like here, here, here. So another, like, it would show blanks, meaning there's still some dates here where the open date was there, but we don't have a hire, so it's not going to show. Like you see here, there's no March, but we want to show March in the data set. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start on January 31st and then February 29th, and then I'm just going to drag it down. And I'll just copy these three. You could also type it in, but I'll just copy those three values, and I'm going to go down to the end of 26. So if you type in 131, 24, 229, 24, select both of them and then drag it down, it'll automatically fill to the end of each month. And this is what we want here, just so we can get a full range. Because we don't, if we do, equals unique to get like a unique list of this here, you're skipping a lot of months, right? There's no March, there's no September, there's no January, right? I mean, and also the sequencing is out of order, right? So just do it that way. Okay, so the next two things we want to do is how many hires and then time to fill. So how many hires were there? And that's pretty easy to calculate because it's just counting the number of yeses. So we need to do the number of yeses here based off this month here. So it's going to be a COUNTIFS equals COUNTIFS. So count if an offer was accepted here, comma, yes, comma, and then the month here, comma, is right here, B3, and you're going to get a 0. But the next one, you get a 1, right? And then you can sort of see all the way down. Okay, so now we need to do the time to fill in. It's going to be a formula you may have never seen before. So there is a median formula in Excel, but we can't do that formula to start with because there's no median if. Like, we need a median if it's yes in that column and the number of days. And so once we get those, then we can do the median. So we want to filter, right? So we want to get any value in this column if this column is yes and the month matches from the other data set, right? So that's the tricky part. You can't do median if s, meaning earlier we did count if s, right? So give me the median if, column R is yes and column T matches the month, but there's no formula to do that. You can do a median if formula, but this is going to be way easier, and I'll show you. So what we want to do is we want to filter this column here anywhere there's a yes here and the month is matching the data set on the other tab. So filter, and then now we add the arguments, include this here to make sure to add this bracket. It's sort of weird why you have to do that, but you have to do that. Equals yes, and then you multiply. You multiply the next argument. Actually, we need to close the brackets, then multiply, then open brackets. We multiply it where the month equals, and if you remember on the other sheet, it's cell B3, and then 2 brackets. And you get an error because there's none. And so if you drag it down, you'll see there's 1. If you drag it down again, error. And then if you drag it down again, you get 2. Right? Because this is a dynamic array. So what we want to do is we want to do first, give me the median number. So give me the median. And so 26 plus 17. So the median of 26 and 17 is going to be the average of those two, which is going to be 26, 36, 43 divided by 2. So it's going to be 21.5. Let's see how good my mental math is. Yeah, so it's 21.5. And so now we just drag this down. Like, don't worry about the errors because we're going to fix them. So what we're going to do here is we need to create the chart. And I'm going to leave those errors in there just to show you. Essentially, there's an error because there's no value. But now what we want to do is we want to calculate this chart. And we're going to have the line as the time to fill, and then the columns as the number of hires. So you can just click anywhere in the data set whenever it's structured like this. Go to Insert, Recommended Charts, and you don't really see what you want. Go to All Charts, Combo, and now it makes a little bit more sense. But this is the time to fill KPI, so we want the other one on a secondary axis. We don't want these two numbers on the same axis. We don't want a 1 on the same axis as a 33. So the hires is going to be the secondary axis. And now this makes sense. It's the obvious one you can see is it just goes up and down, right? We don't want that. So wherever it's a 0, we want it to not show up on the chart. And so the way we do that is we need to do if error, and then here do a comma, and if there's an error, just do NA. And you're going to get a different looking error, but now you can see all the blanks are gone. You're not getting the huge drop between months or whatever there's a 0. And the way to make it look more presentable is if you right click on the chart and then you go to select data, hidden in empty cells, right here, connect data points with the line. And then now everything's connected. And so it just looks better, right? You don't have the 33 days to 0 days, 21 days to 0 days. You don't have those huge swings. But yeah, I mean that's the KPI. That's the video. The rest is just housekeeping. Just formatting some of these things. So here I don't want to have a 0, so I want to just be like 35, 40, so on and so forth. So I'm going to double click on that on the y-axis. I'm going to click the 3 columns here, go to number, and then 0 decimals. And then on this side, I'm going to double click because this one I do want a 0. I just don't want 2.5 and 3. I want 3.0. So same thing, just go to number, but this time just make sure to do one decimal. And for the chart title, I'm just going to copy from over here. Well, say I am. Okay. I'll get there. Okay, and then just other things, if you want to make these, if you want to change the color on this, you can make it black. You can make it maybe size 10.5 font. You can make it bold. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can format these types of things. I mean, at the end of the day, you want it to, you want the numbers, you want the chart. I mean, everything else just makes it more like visually sort of appealing. But in reality, if you can make decisions off these things, that's what matters the most. But anyways, that's it for this one. If you have any questions, as always, questions at databoards.io. If you want this data set, there's a link to download it with my solutions, all the formulas. If you need some help structuring this data, getting KPIs, understanding the format, then there's a link to an email, a link to hop on my calendar, or you can shoot me an email. But anyways, that is it for this video, and I will see you in future lessons.